So Hare Krishna devotees, this is Bhakti Caitanya Swami here. Just tiny little bit of background information about me. I took an interest in Krishna consciousness in the later part of 1972. I actually saw Prabhupada at the university in Auckland in April 1972. Then I went to Australia, and then from there by ship to England, landing in England probably like sometime early or mid-December 72. Then I wanted to find the temple, so I went and found the temple. And I moved into the temple on January the 6th, 1973. The temple in Bury Place in London. Yes. So that's when I really took Krishna consciousness seriously. I immediately became very serious about it. And currently I'm a member of the GBC body. I'm a sannyasi. I serve as an initiating spiritual master. And yes, attend meetings twice a year where we talk about the development of ISKCON worldwide and deal with devotees and disciples on a daily basis, basically. So that's me at the moment. Well, it was the end of 1979, and I had been, for the last, I think, 4 years, 3 to 4 years, I had been running the British BBT. Yes, we had a branch of the BBT, meaning producing books, printing books, for a few years in England. So I was running that. And one day at some point in December of 79, the GBC and BBT trustee, Jayatirtha Das, he called me in and he said he wanted me to come to South Africa because Tulsi Das, who was, a very competent manager, really very competent manager in Krishna consciousness, he was needed in England because we had just purchased a big property, much bigger, the buildings, much bigger than Bhaktivedanta Manor, 2 or 3 times the size, something like that. Yes, just right at that time. And they wanted, Jayatirtha Prabhu wanted Tulsi Das, who is so competent, to come and manage that temple project. Yeah, sort of near Coventry or thereabouts in England. So now, but Tulsi Das was the national secretary in South Africa and the temple president, and he was just running everything. So the arrangement was, he would base himself in England and look after that new project, big project, but he would remain as national secretary for South Africa and come, a couple of times a year or so, and I would just be the temple president of the farm project with temple and deities that we had in Cato Ridge. Cato Ridge being, fairly close to Pietermaritzburg, between Durban and Pietermaritzburg, but quite a bit closer to Maritzburg. So that was the idea. He wanted me to do that, Jayatirtha. He was GBC and the BBT trustee. And, the BBT service I was doing was under him. So I agreed. And made arrangements to go. And I arrived in South Africa. I forget the actual date, but I would say it was sort of mid-January of 1980. Yes, I landed in Joburg, spent a few days there, and then we came down to Cato Ridge, and I sort of settled in there and started trying to oversee the project. I'd never been a temple president before. But yes, I did that. And I was doing that till it was around Gorpanim 82. Around just very, like a matter of a couple of weeks before Gorpanima 82. Yes, I knew Jayatirtha very well. He became the GBC in England and the Guru in 1976. And I worked closely with him. I was sort of one of the senior people around him, a member of the management board, etc. And then I had been running the BBT, which he was overseeing. So I knew him extremely well. And, in South Africa, it seems, at least from what I am aware of, they wanted to build the temple, but he hadn't really been able to make much progress with it. Yeah. In late 81, he came and installed Anantashesh under where the altar and the deities are now standing. Approximately. Yeah. So that was something, but in terms of really getting things moving and raising the millions of rands required, it just wasn't happening at all. So then now, this whole scandal broke out, unfortunately, and he left ISKCON. So therefore, just after Gorpanima, a matter of days, or maybe say a week, or might have been 10 days, Bhagavan came and Giriraj Maharaj. They came together and they had been appointed to take over the running of ISKCON in South Africa. And Bhagavan was a guru. Giriraj Maharaj, I'm not sure maybe he was already a guru, but, Bhagavan was a very sort of dominating person. He was very much a my way or the highway type, very much. So he just sort of asserted himself, and Giriraj Maharaj, although he was also a GBC and came to be co-GBC, the Giriraj Maharaj just, understanding how Bhagavan thought, he just took the second fiddle role as national secretary, and Bhagavan was he was the one who was really on top of things. And, so that was 82, perhaps it was March, say. And Bhagavan, he really got the project going. Yeah. Anybody who could raise money was engaged in raising money. And we had a little center up in Joburg. But, it was just this very small thing. Cato Ridge was ISKCON South Africa, basically. So there was just like a skeleton staff left in Cato Ridge just to worship the deities. That was all. And there are a couple of ladies who went out to raise money just to run the place. Right, but anybody else who could practically do anything, they all went out. In fact, many devotees from from Indian backgrounds, they joined our party selling paintings, and a few like Shamlal Prabhu, a Prabhupada disciple who had been engaged in working with the Indian community raising funds, he continued with that. And I think one or two others continued working with the Indian community. But otherwise, everybody was out selling paintings. Yes, because, Tulsidas was an expert in raising money. He was, when it came to management and all related things, he was really expert. So he found out that he could get, or we could get, or he could get for us very cheap paintings, painted with acrylics, which are like oil paints, but they dry very quickly. Oil paint takes like even a week to dry, but acrylics, they dry, I don't know, within minutes or something along those lines. But they look like oil paints. They're kind of thick, so you get sort of the texture, that you get with oil paints. They were just very general paintings. They were landscapes, like mountains and rivers, that sort of thing. They were bowls of flowers. They were seascapes. They were like bowls of fruit, still lifes, that sort of thing, which we got initially from one lady, a Mrs. Kim in Korea. And they were costing us, by the time they came here, because they're all different sizes, from very small up to, like 60 centimeters. 90 by 60. 90 by 60, almost a meter wide. And initially they were just very general types of things like that. But by the time they landed in South Africa and we got them, they got the most expensive ones, the big ones, cost not more than 10 rands. So they're really cheap. And we were selling them for 90 rands. So, a major, very profitable. And there was hardly anyone else in the country selling these paintings. There was a group of people from Poland, but very small group. They were also doing them. But we were by far the biggest. There was generally about 25 of us going out. So after maybe, not long, like 3 or 4 months, Tulsidas started getting South African scenes. Yeah. In fact, what he did, he went around to art galleries, these exotic art galleries in Johannesburg, with, real oil paintings, and sometimes costing, 1,000 rands or more. And he said, anyway, he got to take photos of the paintings. And then he had Mrs. Kim and her team paint them. So, and then we're selling them for 180 rands, although maybe they were costing us 20 rands each. They were more expensive. But again, the profit was just huge. So initially we were just selling the paintings, and the people would have to deal with getting the paintings framed themselves. But then he realized that we can also start framing. So it was maybe like June or July or something of 82, something like that. We started getting frames. The profit ratio, which we also sold like for 90 rands each, the very big ones, but they were costing like 40 rands, so the profit was not so high. But still, the vast majority of people would want a frame from us. So it was just, some more profit. Yeah. So then, well, Madhavi Prabhu, Ramanuja Prabhu, and I, we were traveling. Most of the other devotees were based in Joburg and just going around Joburg and Pretoria. Yeah, the great majority. But the three of us were traveling. So we got vehicles. We had an Opel Record. It's quite a big vehicle. Yeah. And Madhavi Prabhu had a VW Passat. These are station wagons. And each of us got a trailer specifically designed to take the size of paintings. To take the size of frames that we were using. Yeah, so we're having them manufactured in Johannesburg. After a while, he just formed a team, and we started just making our own frames. So therefore the profit became higher. Instead of like 40 rands for a big one, came down to 25 or 30 maybe, something like that. And we also started importing frames, like very decorative, fancy frames from Taiwan. Yeah, they looked very nice. And they're also cheap, 10, 20 rands. Yeah, so like this, we're traveling all over. And we really, we went, well, Ramanuja and I, we were together. Madhavi Prabhu, for a while he had someone, a devotee named Caitanya Bhagavat, going with him, but Caitanya Bhagavat left the movement after a little while. And Madhavi Prabhu just continued on his own. Yeah, so me and Ramanuja, we went to Beit Bridge. You can't go any further north in South Africa. And we went to, in fact, in 83, we moved to Cape Town, the three of us. And we got a place, we're renting some like a flat sort of thing, down in Cape Town. And we were just going all around the Western Cape, all the way out to like Mossel Bay, not Mossel Bay, is it? No. What's it called? Clettenburg and further out. Yeah. Oh yeah, Oudtshoorn. We went to Oudtshoorn a few times, etc., etc. And up the west coast, we went as far out as far up as there's a place called Nubberbeep. Nubberbeep, yeah. We sold paintings in Nubberbeep, yes. And eventually, in 84, right, we went up to Namibia, what was then Southwest Africa, and we sold a lot of paintings. Oh yeah. I mean, we were doing very, very well, actually. We were really doing very well. Selling lots of paintings and collecting thousands and thousands of rands. You know, you get small ones, medium, big. But, you know, we were averaging between, say, the three of us, although it was like two because Ramanuja and I were together, Madhavi Prabhu on his own. We were averaging, I'd say, on a daily basis between us, between several hundred rands up to 2,000 a day, but sometimes more. Oh yeah, sometimes more. So Ramanuja Prabhu and I, we were averaging probably 6,000 rands a week, sometimes up to 10. And Madhavi Prabhu was doing basically the same. Yeah. And, you know, it was kind of amusing because we were mainly in areas which are very Afrikaans speaking. Of course, they can all speak English, but generally they definitely don't. So we would walk in, we were going shop to shop, and sometimes like to factories, and you know, door to door in the evenings, maybe a little bit, but in the evenings, during the day, we would sometimes meet people who want us to go to their house so they can see how the paintings will look in their house. So we would, you know, not every evening, but a couple or a few evenings a week, we'd go to people's houses and do like that. And then we would frame the paintings on the spot. We had the frames, and we had masonite cut to size, and we just glue the canvas to the masonite, cut the extra canvas off, stick it in a frame, and we had these framing guns. They would fire like staples. You put it in, you know, against the body of the frame and just go click. It goes bang, the staple would go in, which would hold the painting. When, like I said, we were in Cape Town in 83, and a really funny experience happened. We're about to go out, and this Madhavi Prabhu at that point, Caitanya Bhagavat was with him still. And they had got an order the day before, which they were meant to deliver this day, the next day. So we're all going out and going down. We were staying in this, it was like a holiday flat building right in the center of Cape Town. So there's always someone like on the reception. So we're going out, and this Caitanya Bhagavat, he had to frame this painting. But the framing gun was, he couldn't find it. It must have been in the car. So he came running down into the foyer shouting, "Where's the gun? Where's the gun? Where's the gun?" And the poor person in the reception was just, we had to explain, you know, it's okay. Yeah, you know, yeah, we had some funny experiences. So, yeah, we really got around. I mean, we really got around. Interesting point, up in Namibia, the people, the great majority of the people are Afrikaners, but they don't speak English. They speak Afrikaans, and many of them speak some German. And we didn't speak Afrikaans, none of us. And so, we go into, say, a shop to sell some paintings to the staff or to the owner. And we'd say, yes, we have some paintings here we'd like to show you. And the person would reply in Afrikaans. And we would reply in English. The person would reply again in Afrikaans. We'd reply in English. And by that time, they'd understand we're not going to be speaking Afrikaans here. But there was only one time Ramanuja and I had got into like an unpleasant situation about language. We went into this one office in Bloemfontein, which is already, quite an Afrikaans type place. And the usual thing, we introduce in English, they reply in Afrikaans, and so on. But this fellow who we're talking to, he didn't want to speak English. Not just didn't want, he just wouldn't. And, so a couple back and forth for a minute. Then he said, why won't you speak Afrikaans? That's the main national language. Why won't you speak it? Why? And he became angry with us. And he stood up and looked like he was going to sort of physically attack us. So we quickly exited out of there. But otherwise, there were no incidents at all. Just a little bit of sort of awkwardness, because many of them didn't speak English very well. But no people getting upset. We would come to Cato Ridge every so many weeks and, have a few days of getting together in kirtan and, a nicer program. But then some of the times before we drove off again up into wherever, Transvaal or the Free State or whatever, we would go and have darshan of the deities. So I remember, the temple opened in October, right? Yeah, 85. And I personally stopped in July because they wanted me, Tulsidas Prabhu, wanted me to become like the regional secretary for Transvaal, which meant mainly just overseeing Johannesburg and a little bit in Pretoria. So I stopped in July. The others carried on. And, then the Radharadhanath temple opened. And so, a number of the devotees had to go to Radharadhanath. And we had a place in Muldersdrift, very near Johannesburg. We wanted to develop that. So the painting selling team more or less stopped, or at least reduced tremendously. We were selling paintings from Korea, but I guess in the middle of 82 or something, then we switched to Hong Kong. There was a devotee there, Ram Sharan. He had a whole painting, wholesaling, international business. So we used to get from him. Anyway, so I went out, it was like March, 82, and I carried on till July of 85, myself personally. And I remember the weekend before Christmas, 84, our whole team, all of us, we collected about 250,000 rands. At the time, it was sort of something along the lines of 2 rands to $1. So it was quite a bit of money. If you converted it, say it's $125,000, $130,000. Nowadays, you're talking about well over 1 million rands in 1 week. Yeah. Oh yeah, it was lucrative. It was lucrative. So yeah, that's something about the fundraising. They finished the building, I think in June, or anyway, at least a month or 2 before the opening. Yeah. We would come back every few weeks from those in Joburg would come down to Cato Ridge, and us traveling around all over, we would come back also every few weeks, like once or maybe twice a month, but more like once a month sort of thing. We'd come back to Cato Ridge and have association and nice kirtan, and because we were, us traveling around, we were staying in Rondavel, like holiday resort type, but not expensive. Oh yeah. And a lot of the time in Rondavels. And we couldn't have kirtan. I mean, we could have kirtan, but no instruments, because couldn't make any noise at all. We had cut our seekers off, grown hair, and taken off our neck beads. We were really undercover. Not, someone was saying earlier today with caps. Not really. No caps. No caps. No. We were really undercover. So the build-up, I was, by that time, it was June or maybe it was July, I took over in Mulder's Drift. And then, so we were just focusing on what we were doing there. So I don't really know what was going on down here. It was just a few days before the opening. We just went down there, So I don't know exactly what they were doing there. Well, it wasn't just a day of temple opening. It was, I forget exactly, but it was more like 4 days of different things happening. Like there are these, I think, 4 big Habenkunds. And every day, like all day pretty much, there are these fire sacrifices going on. Yeah. Then one night, they did what they called Bhuta Puja, to get rid of any, if there are any sort of, ghosts or just demoniac influences around. Yeah, it was already dark. And I remember I didn't really know what it was going to involve. And I wasn't quite sure when it was happening. So I went up to the temple room, and I was on my way on the bridge, but not into the building yet. And suddenly hear this shouting, and suddenly the chief priest Gaurkeshava, and a couple of others came running out with pumpkins. Running out, shouting, and whoa! And then they smashed the pumpkins. Woo! They went running past me, you know. It was really, sort of took me aback quite a bit. There are different, I don't know what other things there were other than the yagyas. But then the final day, final day was the main, the abhishek for the deities. That was very nice, really very nice. When we would go to see the deities down in Hillary, you know, these were council flats, and because we're religious workers, each flat was like a 2-bedroom flat, and quite spacious and quite nice. So we were paying 45 rands a month per flat, really cheap. And so anyway, so yeah, the whole, you know, activating their senses, opening their eyes, and all these different things, they all happened in this very big marquee. Not really a marquee. It had a frame, a metal frame. And so in the middle, it was totally open, and it really was big. So, and it was packed. It was just packed. And I don't know if it was the same day or the next day that we had the fireworks display. But it was, you know, by South African standards, it was a big fireworks display. And our people were very inspired to see the fireworks display. So yeah, everyone was, the whole of Chatsworth, Shellcross, surrounding areas came. I mean, really a lot of people. And the whole of Chatsworth was a big traffic jam. Yeah. So it was spectacular. It really was. Yeah, I was temple president in Radharanath around 2000. I forget exactly how long for. Now, I was already a GBC. I became a GBC in 98. Yeah, so I became temple president also because Swarup Damodar became the president, but he just didn't want to continue, so I took over for a while. So, you know, I mean, we tried to organize a like plans for phase 2. But, you know, there wasn't enough money, so we couldn't really get it together. So, but while I was temple president, there was one really nice thing, is that we went and did a series of tent campaigns up on the north coast. We went to Richards Bay, had a nice tent campaign there on the land where our, you know, it's almost complete temple is situated now. It was really nice. Then we went down, coming down to Stanger, and that was also very nice. Then we went to Tongat, and that was also very nice. So I think it was just mainly those three. And then we came down to Lotus Park. But I think we just used the temple there. But it was really nice, and I was very happy, preaching and with kirtan and everything. Small group of us, like 5 or 6 devotees. But it was really nice. Yeah, and after a while I decided being temple president is not really for me. Although, I'm the sort of person who, whatever they seriously want me to do, generally, I'm willing to do it. But yeah, so I was thinking, I'd had enough of this. So, but now what to do? But then Indradyumna Maharaj was spending a lot of time here, really spending a lot of time. And he approached me and he said he wanted to become the temple president. Would I mind? And I said, no, it's not a problem. Go ahead. Yeah. So he took over. Okay. Yes, well, when we talk about the temple, we're not really, I don't see that we're just talking about the temple, but it's ISKCON in this area. Yeah, and, it's very important for ISKCON in this area to develop effective preaching strategies and activities. The university program is going on, and on the whole, it's quite effective. I would say it's good. It's good. But book distribution, previously there was book distribution going on a reasonable scale, and we were competing, like this temple, competing against other bigger temples from other parts of the world. Now, maybe in a marathon, we can do something substantial, but otherwise, in general, it's not so much. Yeah. So we need to do that. Oh, another thing which is good is the festivals, the temple festivals. Of course, they can also be developed further to some degree. But, basically, they, like the festival we had today, they're really good. But then we also, it's not easy, but we have to find ways to break into the African community more. And, frankly, the best people, the best devotees for breaking into the African communities are African-bodied devotees. Because particularly, if you start, it's one thing going downtown or, to sort of general places, but it's another thing going into the real townships. If you're African, it's not so bad. But if you're not African, and what to speak of if you're female, it's not going to be very safe. It really isn't. So, that is a factor in the whole sort of picture as far as that type of preaching goes. So we need to get African-bodied devotees to really become serious about Krishna consciousness and to really develop like some sort of missionary spirit. We want to take it and give it to our people. That's what's required, actually. But that's, yeah. So I'd really like to see that sort of thing happening. I would say it can probably happen from the university, because there we're working with a lot of previously, going back to like when I was the president, I would go and do university programs from time to time, and it was literally all Indian students. When I was doing it, you were a student at that time. I mean, it was pretty much all Indian. I mean, which is great. I mean, many of them become really nice devotees, and that's just great success. But the social dynamics here, we've got to break into the African community effectively. We really have to. So these types of things, the next generation have to really start thinking about and trying different ways, of doing these types of things. Yeah. Shri Prabhupada ki jai.